This video is presented as part of PIDP 3230, Evaluation of Learning. In this video, I'm going to be discussing a classroom assessment technique known as the 1-minute paper, also called the minute paper or the half-sheet response. This is a simple way for an instructor to gain feedback on student learning. It only takes 2 or 3 minutes, and it provides manageable amounts of timely and useful feedback for a minimal investment of time and energy. So if it takes 2 or 3 minutes, why do we call it a 1-minute paper? The students are given 60 seconds to write down a response to a question from their instructor. The whole exercise should only take about 2 or 3 minutes out of the class time. This question typically refers to that day's lesson or to a subject that's been discussed in class. This technique can be used in a number of ways, but typically serves as a quick way for an instructor to gauge student comprehension. It is intended as a formative strategy and may well provide learners with the means to self-assess their own understanding. An added benefit of the exercise is that it requires students to do more than just show up, as Parent mentions in her strategy bite. It increases student involvement. It can also help students develop the ability to think holistically, improve listening skills, develop the ability to concentrate, and improve their learning of the subject matter. When formulating questions, instructors should keep in mind what they want to gauge and use open-ended questions instead of questions that can be answered with a simple yes or no response. This gives much greater detail and allows the students to put responses in their own words. Questions like, what was most memorable about today's class? Or, what was the most important thing you learned during this class? Remember, we're looking for insight. And in order to gain that, we need details and perspective. As well as gauging student learning, this technique allows the instructor to gauge their own effectiveness at presenting the material. If what the student deemed to be the most important part of the lesson isn't what the instructor was striving for, the instructor may need to alter their presentation or their focus for the lesson. In that way, the 1-minute paper can allow for mid-course changes or clarification prior to a final exam, or before it hampers further learning in a complex topic. In short, it provides feedback that you as the instructor can respond to. As an instructor, this is a very flexible technique and can be used not only for reflection on classroom lessons, but also field trips, exams, lab work, homework, or anywhere else you might think of. Personally, I have found this to be a great way to make sure the students are staying on track and are focusing on the important points of the lesson. This tool is especially useful in large lecture groups where it can be difficult to achieve significant lecturer-student interactions, as mentioned by Harwood in his writing The 1-Minute Paper, a communication tool for larger lecture classes. So how do you prepare your first 1-minute paper? In order to be successful, it's important to put some thought into this exercise and to communicate it clearly. Formulate the questions before class. Make sure they're ready to be displayed in some way, and provide cards or paper. Have these cards or scrap paper ready to hand out at a convenient time. Make sure the students understand the cards are to be answered anonymously. Let the students know how much time they will have to complete the exercise, what kind of answers you want, whether they're words, phrases, or short sentences, and when they can expect your feedback. So once the students have completed their answers and you've collected the responses, you want to sort through them and make notes of any useful comments. Keep in mind what the goal of this exercise is. Useful doesn't necessarily mean positive. If you use this technique regularly throughout your course and issue changes according to responses, you should be able to see the development in student clarity and thoughtfulness. We've mentioned several benefits of this classroom assessment technique. Things such as how it gives immediate feedback for the teacher and quick response for the students, allowing for ongoing program changes. Responses from a large class can be read and analyzed quickly and in a short time. It also shows the students that the instructor is interested in their learning and cares about being effective in presenting the material. The drawback of this technique is that it depends on having very effective questions. It can be difficult to form questions that are clear, can be comprehended quickly, and answered in a short time, while staying focused on the outcomes. And, as Steed mentions in his review of the 1-minute paper, it can be easily employed to excess, and this can be reflected in quickly declining response rates. Perhaps the greatest challenge for an instructor is not to respond to the feedback from a place of irritation. If we're asking for feedback, we need to be able to accept it. This is not an emotional exercise. We're focusing on improvement and learning. Thanks for listening, and hopefully this benefits you and your students.